I call to order the regular Building Board of Appeals for October 16, 2025. Roll call.
Board Member Paul Garland.
Here.
Board Member Robert Hart.
Here.
Board Member David Arnsworth.
Here.
Board Member Hugh Black Jr.
Here.
Board Member Kevin Cox.
Here.
Building Official Michael Neal.
Present.
Fire Marshal Mike Redmond.
Present.
City Attorney John Iser.
Present.
And Admin Staff Leah Harvey present. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda is public commentary general. Is anybody here for general comments? I'm seeing none. Close that section. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. We received minutes from the July 17, 2025 meeting. Does anyone have comments on those or corrections to those? If not, can we have a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve minutes. I'll second.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. The first item of the appeals, actions, and show cause hearing is we have a single appeal. The process is we have the staff make a report about the variance, and then we'll have the applicant come up and present their appeal. And then the board will ask questions of the applicant, and we'll have a motion. And that's the process. We need at least a majority of the people on the board to vote in favor, so that would be 3 positive votes today. So, get started with staff report.
Good afternoon. This is Fire Marshal Michael Redmond. I'll be doing the staff report today. This is for appeal number BBA 25-0011. This is located at 336 South State Street here in Ann Arbor. Property owner is Oxford Properties Management. Petitioner for this is Yellowstone Architect and Design. Background for this, the property at 336 South State is an existing structure built in 1910. It is listed in BS&A. It's mixed commercial property with stores/retail commercial and apartment commercial occupancies. The building is under interior renovation, required a fire suppression system, which was brought to my attention to review for a compliant supporting hydrant for the FDC, Fire Department connection. After reviewing what was proposed for the FDC location and what existing hydrants were available, I cited it as non-compliant. It was cited for non-compliance for the following reasons. Number 1, location of the FDC under 2021 IFC code 912.2, 912.2.1. 912.2 location. With respect to hydrants, driveways, buildings, and landscaping, fire department connections shall be so located that the fire apparatus and fire hose connected to the supply of the system will not obstruct access to the buildings for other fire apparatus. The location of the fire department connection shall be approved by the fire code official. 912.2.1 visible location. Fire department connections shall be located on the street side of the building or facing approved fire apparatus access roads. Fully visible and recognizable from the street, fire apparatus access roads or nearest points of the fire department vehicle access or otherwise approved by the fire code official. Note, the petitioner is not asking for relief from these codes in this BBA. The FDC will be required to be on the South State Street side of the building, road frontage, and there is only one hydrant that is compliant with both of these codes. This is the hydrant on the same side of the street, approximately 165 feet from the north to the north of the north corner of the building. Number 2, distance from the FDC, fire department connection, to the closest compliant fire hydrant. Note, the minimum 100-foot requirement is not an IFC fire code requirement. The petitioner has cited a code that does not apply to this project and was not cited by me as the fire code official. The petitioner is asking for relief from Fire Code 2021 IFC 507.5.1.1 that I did not cite because it does not apply to this project. There is not a standpipe system at this structure. Note, I cited 2025 standard specifications, public service standard specifications, see cover letter and excerpts which were provided with the staff report. These are minimum standards outside of fire code that must be complied with as written. These standards for Article 3 are enforced by both city engineers and the fire marshal/fire code official. Article 3 water design criteria, fire hydrant spacing and coverage. An accessible hydrant shall be required within 100 feet of a fire department connection, FDC, via an approved fire route. For residential buildings 3 stories or less in height or for which an internal sprinkler system is installed under NFP R13R, the maximum separation distance shall be increased to within 150 feet of an FDC. This is what was cited for the noncompliance for the 100-foot distance requirement. The petitioner's request for relief does not apply to this required standard, and I do not believe the Building Board of Appeals can rule over 2025 standard specifications. The applicant requests relief from the fire code requirements fall under the following. Building Board of Appeals standards for approval, 2021 International Fire Code Section 111 and the Municipal Code Ordinance Title 9, Police Regulations, Chapter 111, Fire Prevention, Section 9108 for appeals. 9108 appeals, whenever the chief or fire marshal shall disapprove an application or refuse to grant a permit applied for, when it is claimed that the provision of this code do not apply or the true intent and meaning of this code have been misconstrued or wrongly interpreted, the applicant may appeal from the chief or fire marshal's decision to the Building Board of Appeals within 30 days from the date of the decision of appeal. 1, the provision of this code does not apply. 2, the intent of this code has been wrongly interpreted. Note that 9108 does not allow to have a proposed equal or better form of protection under fire code for Building Board of Appeals. Staff recommendation for this, staff recommends that the application be denied for 2 reasons. The petitioner is seeking relief from a fire code that was not cited and does not apply. 2, the city standard that was cited is required as a minimum standard, and there is not a supporting fire hydrant within the required 100 feet. This standard has not been misinterpreted. The provision of this standard does apply, and the proposed distance of 165 feet is not compliant. It does not appear that the 2025 specification standards can be taken to Building Board of Appeals. All modifications or deviations from fire codes are solely up to the discretion of the fire marshal or fire code official. The fire marshal applies fire code as a minimum requirement, and any exception from it must be written in the fire code as a listed exception for the specific code. This ensures safety is still being met with the intent of the code as written by the code writer. Fire and emergency response and access are life safety issues. The proposed motions are as written allow for the appeal to be granted under that the intent for that specific code in 2021, section 507.51.1.1 has been incorrectly interpreted by the fire marshal, or the provision of the 2021 IFC code 507.5.1.1 does not apply to the development at 336 South State. To appeal, deny it, the true intent of the code has been correctly interpreted. The code does apply, and I added a third part to it that the code was not cited by the fire marshal. It does not apply to this project.
Great, thank you. Applicant, you want to come up and present your case?
Yes. And first off, thank you to board members, all of you, for attending today. I know it was a rather short sprint getting everyone corralled and a quorum put together, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lemieux, Redmond, Reiser, and Ms. Harvey for all of your support in the process, this ongoing 2-year process of getting this renovation of this historic structure built out. My name is Caleb Marquardt. I am an architect at Yellowstone Architecture and Design, and we are working with Oxford Property Management on this specific property at this lovely historic 336 South State location on the 3rd floor. This is a historic building, as was read in the report. Thank you. It was built between 1897 and 1910, and really has not undergone any change of use at all since the 1970s. It was lovingly referred to as the hippie loft. And as such, we found exactly what the current use is now, a lovely congregate living facility with some very interesting materials being used in the inside. It was a lot of fun. It was one of the most intriguing existing conditions I've interfaced with. I'd like to also thank my colleagues for all the support and for being here as well. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. A brief history, not only of the building, we know the date and the fact that it is on the historic district, the State Street Historic District. But this project was, it was kicked off in 2023, February of 2023, as when the initial permit was applied, and that was back under many other purviews, and frankly, I think that was right when Stream was starting. But we received some comments in November of that year of 23, and we knew immediately that we needed to go get a similar variance at the state level for accessibility. That happened, and we got BFD approval later that year in November of 2024, and the permit was officially issued in January of 2025. So while the project's been going on for 2 years, we've had multiple iterations and state variance approvals for what we've been doing at this location. As such, we've been aligned to all of the permit comments and recommendations, not only from the city of Ann Arbor at the time, which one would have been Annie Huang's comments, but also under the state of Michigan's allowable variances for what we've been doing here. And that applies to accessibility, not specifically for the fire options that we're talking about now. But I wanted to bring everyone up to speed on that. The existing use, we have not changed the hippie loft aesthetic. It's still R3 use, which is under the commercial code. We applied under the rehabilitation code for existing buildings. At that time, because it was 2023, we were still under the 2015 rehab code and all subsequent reference codes. So it's been fun trying to work from the 2021 back to 2015 to remember our history of what we had gone through. But just so everyone understands the code under which this was permitted and approved. And lastly, just I want to give everyone a brief status. We are 99% complete on the renovation inside. The existing condition obviously did not have a sprinkler system since there was no change in the way of use. We did want to provide a higher level of safety in this location, so we did provide a sprinkler system. Right now, pipes are run, we're just waiting for the tie-in to the main. So frankly, that's the last domino to fall before occupancy can be achieved, hopefully by the next month or so. With that, I want to kind of dig into the meat and potatoes of this application. I'm going over of this very well-written response, and again, I want to thank you, Mr. Redmond, for this response and write-up. Both you and Mr. Lemieux have been extremely helpful in getting us answers to all of our, what we considered our code exceptions. And again, we want to bring this, I'm sorry that this was under we bring this here through Stream, and Stream has a couple of different options as to how we want to ask for the variance. And by no means am I trying to say the majority, if anything, was misinterpreted. It was more so we're here for, as the website says, the reconsideration of a code official's opinion on certain options here. So there have been a few handouts that we've supplied to Ms. Harvey, and she's distributed to everyone, some of which have been the different permit applications that have been given for this. Our standard building permit that was from 2023 is C230070. We then had our subsequent MESA 25-0084 permit applied, and as part of that tie-in to the main of the sprinkler system, this being the first sprinkler system for this historic building, that was CVLP 25-0013. Those were applied in earlier this year in April. So going through these items, we have this understanding that there is, not only through the International Fire Code, but also from the fairly recent 2025 engineering building standards, a very both of these code avenues run in parallel to each other. I understand that there is the open question that I'll get to in just a moment about the jurisdiction to make judgments thereon. But I do want to just kind of spell out a few of the items that we are asking for a variance from. We understand that our sprinkler water main tie-in is going to be interfaced in the direct area in front, facing east of the State Street facade. Again, this building is a few buildings just south of Nichols Arcade, just for everyone's imagination here. And we're on the west side of State Street. We plan to put that fire department connection on that east side, and the question came up due to the radius to the accessible hydrants in a way that does not occlude a fire apparatus access, aka a fire road, aka in our State Street and or North U. There is that one fire hydrant just at the northwest corner of North U and State Street. It's right by the opening to Nichols Arcade. And while it is on the same sidewalk, and we would not be blocking any streets or fire apparatus ways, it is outside of the radius of even the 150-foot radius. So we fully understand the existing conditions, and we are therefore asking not so much for, not the misinterpretation as it was before, but a reconsideration of the code official's opinion for this and similar variances in past for existing FDCs that may have been outside of a normal radius. Now, I know that there have been multiple references to the IFC, and Fire Marshal Redmond has also made it clear that the IFC was not exactly what he was citing in his email responses prior to this meeting, and I understand that. He is also referencing the 2025 standard specifications, public services standard specifications, which is a city standard spec requirement through the engineering department, and that these are minimum standards that the city engineers have recently released. I would like to specify that the Article 3 water design criteria with the fire hydrant spacing and coverage that was read a few minutes ago, item C, where the accessible hydrant shall be required within 100 feet of a fire department connection. And similarly, under NFPA 13R, the maximum separation distance shall be increased to within 150 feet of an FDC for 13R. Both of those are almost circular references with the IFC. So while I don't disagree that you did not cite the IFC, I do also agree that the 2025 standard specifications do have almost circular references to the IFC requirements specifically for NFPA 13R. Even the BBA, the write-up cites this. There's two questions that come off of this. Number one, is the date at which we had submitted the permit back in 2023. These standards did not exist in their form. They were made from the historic background. So without saying ex post facto, I will say that there was not the standards to have been responded to during our permitting process back in 2023 and even 2024 after we got the variance from the state of Michigan. So I'll put that on the side while I further discuss. Let's assume, though, that with this circular reference of the new 2025 standards being applied, the question is there even a jurisdiction for the Building Board of Appeals to make a call on this? While we seek relief from these radiuses of the existing hydrants for our fire suppression, which is inside of a historic building, we want to make a few items clear in the way that we approach the design intent for this building specifically. Not only that I was citing the IFC so everyone kind of understands where I'm coming from the architectural building code perspective, where there are often exemptions for radiuses with fire code approval, fire code official approval for R3 occupancies. Similarly, hydrants in close proximity, and then there's also the similar undue burden of financial hardship, which we used later last year for the same accessibility requirements for the state of Michigan. Right now, our building itself, the assessed value is, it's valued right now at $566,868 per the BSA. The total assessed value from the point of its BSA inception is about $1.9 million, but the undue burden of financial hardship, very similar to what we had done and got approved through the state of Michigan accessibility variance, was a $441,000 300 fee, including the fire hydrant addition, main tie-ins, fees, right-of-way fees, and tie-in and shutdown fees, all of which constitute 86% of our total construction budget, which would be about half the total valuation of the building. So while that has been used in the past successfully with the state of Michigan for accessibility, I withhold using that right now for this because I want to focus more so on the existing conditions of the hydrants just outside the radius and the assumption of applicability of the 2025 standards. The last two items I'll specify before I open up to questions on the variance for the difference of code opinion and the variance for the existing hydrant to be used just outside of the radius for our providence of the FDC. I agree that the standard has not been misinterpreted. It was very well interpreted. The question is, does it apply to our location because of two things, the date of which it was created and put into effect, and secondarily, the similar requirements of the IFC that we would be able to petition for a variance, if not here, then at other appeals levels. Lastly, I wanted to read the same hydrant spacing and coverage. Where the NFPA 13R requirements are made, we have provided a few radius drawings from not only the south end, but more so applicably to the north end of our 336 South State building, where the approved fire department connection location is planned to be put in. That radius is just outside, is 163 feet from that point to that fire hydrant at the northwest corner of State and North U. So we find that we are just outside of the required radiuses, not only aligning to the IFC, but also to the 2025 Public Works building standards. So we would request not only the opinion of the code official to be allowed as a variance outside of that radius, but also if that is not the case and the question then becomes a method of jurisdiction of the Building Board of Appeals being able to even rule on this because it is a building standard and not so an issued state standard, then we would also similarly request the variance or a motion or an amended motion then for the variance based off of that radius alone. We do have the existing condition of a non-sprinkled R3 historic structure, and we have agreed to not only put in a sprinkle system on that level to increase the fire safety, but we have also agreed further with an increased cost of about $175,000 to add the stub and FDC. And we find that I haven't even factored that into the $450,000, 86% of our current construction budget. So that would put it even higher, which would be commensurate with the similar approval we got from the state of Michigan for the accessibility as a percentage. Lastly, before I close up, I know sometimes I have a propensity to talk a little bit too much. The existing historic building itself does have a few riders in the variance exception request that was given through STREAM, IFC specifically in 102.6 and 1103.1.1, which covers historic building application through the IFC. Provisions are not mandatory for existing historic structures, provided the project adheres to a fire protection plan, which Mr. Redmond had also raised an issue that there's not a similar pathway for exception through the 2025 building standards. It's purely an IFC exception pathway. So that really is the question of the applicability of either, and does the 2025 building standards that were so recently released not apply because it's ex post facto from the time we even had the permit issued and similar revisions and write-ups done through the state of Michigan. With that, I'll hand it over to the board and city officials for any questions. Happy to hear them.
Okay. Thank you. We got a rebuttal from?
Yeah, I would like to mention one thing, that these city standards were rewritten in 2025. The exact verbiage found for Article 3 for the water is identical, and it did exist when you applied in 2023. Okay. The only thing that happened here is I just took the most current one offline, what's for the city, but they existed in 2023, same verbiage, identical. So that aspect, just so for the Board of Appeals members know, these city standards, which is what the common terminology you hear within our departments within the city here. We refer to city standards. They've been in existence and were in existence with that exact verbiage in 2023.
Okay, thank you.
And I do agree with him as far as, I will say this, I agree with the historical part aspect in your code path, that the fire protection for this would take you to NFPA 914. And that comes off of usually a performance-based system, which is a very, it's a complicated route, to say the least.
It is, yeah.
It is. So I won't argue the historical building stuff. You will hear me argue that I question your authority over the city standards to be able to rule over them, because they're not code, they're standards, and they're not fire code. And if I'm enforcing them and the city engineers are enforcing them, that means you would have to take the city engineers to Board of Appeals, and you can't do that. The second part of that is, I understand the concern, and I commend you for trying to suppress a building that maybe you didn't have to suppress. I wasn't part of the original civil plans for this, so I'm usually not part of that. I was brought in because of the FDC and the supporting hydrant. But the one thing I do stand and hold firm is that money, if you're going to put a system in, the system should be compliant per code. And if that becomes a hardship for money, then they shouldn't have went down the avenue of trying to put the system in. Because if that's the case, anyone could try to put a system into a building and say, I don't need to do this, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it my way. So if you're going to put a system in, it should follow the code path to make sure the system is done to the current codes.
So do we have jurisdiction or don't we?
Yeah, that's,
I asked, honestly, guys, I asked that question.
Just quickly, I would have agreed right off the bat with them, based on the letter that was in the packet, that if they had their permit before the standard effective date, then they didn't have any reason to comply with the 100-foot rule. But
it existed.
At this point,
yeah,
you made that
Yes.
real clear. So that's that.
I do not know. I can't answer your question for you. I have posed that question. I emailed most of the people in this room that very question, trying to get an answer before we got to this day. Because I don't know if you guys have ever had to rule on city standards before. It's always been building code or fire code.
Well, not the least of which is part of the description in here is that we're not allowed to consider better or equal forms.
That's written through the municipal code where the fire codes are legally adopted. So that's a whole nother aspect of how it differs a little bit from building code to fire code.
Okay. And I have two very quick clarification things. The building official code write-up says that the sprinkler system was required.
I wrote that up because there was question of an email correspondence that at some point they wanted to go the route of a 13D system, which does not require an FDC. Once again, I was not part of the civil plan or building plan reviews for this. I'm usually not for existing buildings. I usually only handle new construction. I'm only brought in under these circumstances when this applies to an FDC and a supporting hydrant. With that said, there was email correspondence. They wanted to do a 13D. That was addressed to the building official, Mike Lemieux. I can let him answer it, but it was denied based off the occupancy or proper fire separation, I believe, between the occupancies. So what brought it back to having a mixed occupancy requiring an NFPA 13 system, correct?
yes.
So the system is required. The fire suppression system is required. It's not a goodwill gesture on their part. I just want to make sure that it's going back to what you said about if you're putting in the system, you have to put it in soup to nuts.
I think the answer to this, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways, I don't know if the system was required. They have a code path that you can go down for historical buildings. It takes them to an NFPA 914 pamphlet which is a very specific for historical buildings. And there's a code path for fire protection compliance. Under that code book, there's prescription, and then there's performance. More than likely, prescription would bring you right back to the code book, so you wouldn't want to go that route, you'd want to go performance. The question is, what would be that performance system?
The points-based system, basically, yeah.
Yeah, and it's basically trying to meet the same standards in a different route, and that's what a performance-based system is in easier to understand terms. It's trying to accomplish what the prescribed system would be without doing the prescribed route.
So, can I weigh in a little bit too? So you folks exist because state law, MCL 125.1514, the Construction Board of Appeals, part of the Still, DeRosa, Hale, Single State Construction Act. You guys, thank you, my apologies, you exist because of the state law that says the Construction Board of Appeals for each governmental subdivision enforcing the code, the construction code, shall be created of not less than 3 or no more than 7 members. And it says that if an enforcing agency refuses, which would be us, refuses to grant an application for a building permit, or if the enforcing agency makes any other decision pursuant or related to this act or the code, an interested person or the person's authorized agent may appeal in writing to the Board of Appeals. So, but then the goes on to say, this act does not prevent a governmental subdivision from granting its Board of Appeals, you folks, additional powers or duties not inconsistent with this act. And we've done that in our fire ordinance, which says, whenever the chief or fire marshal shall disapprove of an application or refuse to grant a permit applied for, or when it is claimed that the provisions of this code, that is the city code, do not apply, or that the true intent and meaning of the code have been misconstrued or wrongly interpreted, the applicant may appeal from the chief or fire marshal's decision to the Building Board of Appeals within 30 days. So you folks have jurisdiction, so to speak, to weigh in, to rule on appeals that are construction code based, and there's a lot of construction codes in that stale DeRosa, you know what I'm talking about, the DeRosa code. And you also have authority to weigh in on fire code stuff. Now, with respect to the city's standard specifications, and I think that's at least in your packet in part, where Sue McCormick kind of issued the new ones in January of this year. Those say that if it's just something that's not code-based, not building code-based or fire code-based, but it's only standard specification, it does say that variations and revisions to the standards, minor and technical variations and revisions, that the public services administrator, area administrator, may permit variations to these standards where unusual conditions or circumstances warrant, which these folks might say exists, but you're not the public services area administrator, and you, of course, you know that. And then, as needed, the PSAA will issue general revisions to these standards that relate to the technical aspects. So if it's relief only from these standards, then is it Jordan? Who's the PSAA? My apologies for not knowing. The Public Services Area Administrator. Yeah, I think it's Jordan. It used to be Sue, but it's Jordan. So he would be that person. Now, let's say Jordan says, no, you're not going to do it. Yes, you're going to. Then we have an ordinance generally that states, and this is section 1:16, a due process hearing. Unless there's a specific appeal process, otherwise set forth in our code, you can do a written appeal with the city administrator, and not you, but you can do the applicant, the person denied, can do a written application or appeal with the city administrator, and you'd be entitled to a due process hearing to determine, the merits of your claim. So if it's code-based, building or fire, y'all are the right body to do that. If it's strictly standards. So that's kind of where we are. Ultimately, you get your day in court, and I don't mean court, but I mean you get your day for a hearing, a due process and notice and present your case.
Could I ask a clarifying question to Mr. Reiser about if the building code is referenced in the city standards, would the authority then bounce back to the building board of appeals?
I think that ultimately, if there's some aspect of this, it's building code or fire code, this is the body, the proper form.
Got it. Right.
But we can't, but we're severely limited because typically we're allowed to have a third option, which is that the applicant has provided a better or equal form of protection, fire protection or construction. And according to this, we don't have that latitude. It's either yes or no.
We can grant it to the fire code, but we can't give it to the city code. He'd have to go to the administrator to
We're
go to the city code.
we're still
Yeah.
bumping up against the standard. But just to change the tone for a second. Sir,
Sorry.
in your packet,
Yes.
you show the hydrants that are in and around State Street.
Yes, that's right.
But you devoted 3 pages to something that's on Maynard Street?
Right. I tried to supplementally look at after we initially petitioned, past the initial permit approval, and then, we're going to offer a sprinkler. Do we have the option for an FDC? And that's where the email correspondence happened between Mr. Lemieux, Mr. Redmond, and a few of my other colleagues as well about the need for the FDC, because we knew the FDC would be a trigger through IFC for the radiuses for the hydrants, and that we were just outside those radiuses. So as a tertiary measure, beyond that first run of the radiuses for the hydrants, I was looking at the run from maybe an FDC in the rear of the building, which wouldn't have been approved anyway. So it was kind of moot at this point. It was an idea of trying to make the radius even shorter, which it would have been, but it would have been coming off the rear of the building, which wouldn't have met the clear and present signage for an FDC. And that's still over and above. We petitioned for 13D, which didn't apply because the existing R3 use as congregate living facility wasn't considered a townhome or a single or two family residence, which is not. It's a congregate living facility. So I totally agree with that. We tried, we thought it would be acceptable as a variance, but it was not. So the FDC still had to remain. The question then becomes just that radius to the hydrant, both of which I really don't want to keep stair-stepping, because I feel like what has been started from a historic building to make an effort of goodwill for further safety, it just keeps growing and growing to the point that it's thoroughly unsustainable, not only for our building budget. And I agree that right now I'm used to having that third option where there is some kind of median option of finding a safe route, but now that there's only a black and white, either full city standards or none, the question then becomes, are there other acceptable performance-based options that would be amenable with the city standards, or do we follow some option of permit revision, taking the fire suppression scope out and just removing it completely, and we go right back to where we were, where it's an unsuppressed building, which I don't want to do as the architect of record, because it would make it equally safe as it was when we started the project, but we've already come so far making it safer, so I don't want to backtrack like that. So while I also see your 2 black and white options, where we're used to kind of having a third, I would open that back up to the board for an option.
Wouldn't your only option be go back to NFPA 914D then?
John, correct me if I'm wrong, Reiser.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the statute.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if they were denied here, there's still an appeal process through the standards. Is that correct?
Well, I guess, you folks have the right to interpret the code, and it says that the Board of Appeals shall hear the appeal and render and file its decision with the statements of the reason for your decision, whatever your decision is. Your decision could say you're going to have people in front with water balloons. You're not going to do that. But whatever your decision is and the reasons therefore, that's going to be part of the record that you create. If it's not, like I say, building code based or fire code based, then this really wouldn't be an appropriate forum for that. It would be Jordan Roberts came to me. There's the Public Services Area Administrator, and then then Jordan could confer relief, but you're entitled to a due process hearing there as well in front of him, notice and to present your case and things like you've done here. Be pretty redundant, or similar rather.
Would there be a way, sir, to delineate then the portions of the city standards that would actually be references to building code that the Building Board of Appeals could rule on, and what could be the portion that the city would?
This body has the authority to grant relief to fire and building code provisions.
However referenced.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I have a question. So, you guys, you applied for your permit.
Yes.
In the write-up back from the permit process, was it
November
given you have to
22.
design per these specifications, or?
So if I can speak for a moment and speak on behalf for both sides here to try to be beneficial.
Sure.
You are a historic building, and I brought this up. The pathway from the very beginning of this project, which I was not part of, but the pathway should have been going through NFPA 914 for this. And once again, I commend you because sometimes that pathway in NFPA 914 isn't a suppression system. But there is ways of doing the protection that you're looking for to provide the occupancies of that building. That's the ultimate goal, is getting people out of the structure. I've never dealt with, I'll be really honest, I've never dealt with a performance-based system. I'm not sure if our building department has yet either. It's just not something there, but some of the historic buildings, they go through this process, they do it, and maybe they luck out and they just happen to have that existing hydrant right there if they put an FDC there and they're compliant. So I don't know that code path, going back to your original question, is if you went back, you would at least have to look at the minimum of that performance-based system. They would have to have someone engineer what would be a performance-based system for that building, for the occupancy type, and how then people get out safely. It may incorporate the system you got. It still has to be approved, but it doesn't go around this. Now, the problem is, I think that's going to always hold true, is if you have an FDC on that building, the city standards apply, because the person that's going to review that, the first person who reviews it is the civil engineers, not me. I was brought into this by the civil engineers because it's a dual thing. For the city standards, it's reviewed by our civil engineers and it's reviewed by me. And unfortunately with fire code, for you guys, where it's for the appeals in 9108, it doesn't give that third option. It's either I misapplied or misinterpreted it. It's life safety code. They don't give the third option in that appeals process for fire.
Right.
I don't know what the proper route is from here. I mean, clearly, you guys can try to rule that I either misinterpreted or misapplied, but I think we all know I didn't. And that's even if you're ruling on the city standards.
Nor are we seeking it. Again, this was for the differing opinion per the other use of the Building Board of Appeals is to request a different code official's opinion. And that's why I was trying to get the low-hanging fruit of we're 13 feet outside of the radius for the hydrant. Can we just use the existing hydrant as the easier option for approval from the Building Board of Appeals that would concurrently, if it were accepted, it would satisfy the non-blocking fire apparatus route and the hydrant within the area of the building standards as well. And if that low-hanging fruit option variance is not something that would be accepted either by the Building Board of Appeals through the IFC variances or through a radius of the building standards.
It may go through a performance-based system depending on the uniqueness of the design. I wish I could offer you more on that. I'm not that familiar with NFPA 14, first of all, and performance-based systems, but that may be a route if it's engineered to be able to go that route and get it approved. And I can't remember, and Mike Lemieux, is that system, was it an NFPA 13 or 13R system?
I don't recall.
Do you know what, obviously there was a fire protection engineer that handled the system. Was that designed to be a 13 or 13R?
The current MESA application and what Civil's using is 13R. We were trying to petition it down to 13D because we didn't want the FDC then creating the radius for the hydrant. And then we just tap right into the water main. Since we were going for, because of R3 residential use group, an existing R3 residential use group, we went for 13R, and that one does require the FTC, as you wrote up in your write-up. So, and I
So if
agree,
it's
I'd love to know-
13R, it would be 150 foot.
Right, and we're just 13 feet outside of that, and that's why I was initially petitioning for that as the variance, just being outside of the radius. So we're still providing, the sprinkler system is there, in now, it's in. We're going to put the FDC, and then we were really trying to see if we could use that existing hydrant. Otherwise, it's
And is the
86%
full
budgeted.
building suppressed or just the third floor?
Right now, it's just the third floor and portions of the first. There's WASI records on the second floor, but we do have rated separations and horizontal rated separations that are separating our uses completely.
So, and these gentlemen, this board, they, if it's code-based, they're going to, when it's claimed that either the provisions of the code do not apply, or that the true intent and meaning of the code have been misconstrued or wrongly interpreted. That's their,
I think that that
either of
would
those two tracks.
be, am I correct, and those would be the code sections stated in the appeal?
Excuse me, does the city administrator have more leeway in reviewing this than we do? I mean, if they went back,
He can't do code. I mean,
no, I'm not
I mean,
talking
building code, but.
About the city code, about the,
This is the city standards.
City standards,
If the default is to the city standard, and they're the ones that control it, do they have more leeway in terms of evaluating the location of hydrants relative to their standard and be able to offer them the fact that they have
It wouldn't be
produced more equivalency in fire protection than we have?
Well, it wouldn't be the city administrator. I assume these folks would allege that it's just a minor variation, because instead of 150, it's 167 or whatever the
But it's the city
foot
standard.
the measurement is. It says the PSAA may permit variations to these standards where unusual conditions or circumstances warrant. So that would be Jordan Roberts.
So one of our
That would be-
options would be
That
that-
would be relief,
And-
if relief is based under the city standards and not fire and building code.
But there's no, I mean, I guess in that, there's no unusual circumstance here. You know, they're not blocked off, it's not in the back of a building, it's not, you know, uphill that's miles away from something. Like
That-
this
that
is,
would-
this, you're talking, it's 8 or 13 feet
13.
outside.
Yeah, but I
of
would
s-
say there is an unusual
Yeah,
circumstance.
that would be up to the.
There
that
is
would
an
be up to the-
unusual
the fact
circumstance
finder,
in that
you know,
they filed-
unusual conditions or circumstances warrant.
So we would
They-
have one
they-
option to table this and have
Well, you
them
always
to
have an
go to the
option to table.
PSAA guy and let them make a determination?
Could there subsequently be an amendment to the motion for approval pending the PSAA approval?
So if there's not a code issue here,
you would do a variance, yeah.
then we wouldn't, I don't believe we
Yeah,
would.
These
need to
guys can't
table
weigh
it.
in on your building, they gotta
Or-
weigh in on the code.
So I don't believe that there would be, if it's not directly related to a code, if you're not looking for relief directly from the building code or the fire code, I don't believe this is the group to provide you that. From what John provided, it seems like what you're requesting is a variance from a city standard, and there's a different avenue for that. I think that if this board was going to make a decision, they would base it on the specific code sections from the IFC that you provided, and then they could, weigh in whether they approve those or not. But I think that that would be the end of what they would be able to do.
Would a similar, I guess a simpler or at least more time-effective solution be to amend the variance request to the performance-based system now, since all of the items are already in and suppressed, we just need the water tap into it. And that could be, and it would be, a building code movement and variance approval by this board instead of through the city standards.
Would you be,
As so amended.
like, on the fly, or would they be entitled to some kind of written?
You would have to, just as you submit fire protection plans, you still have to submit the performance plans to the building department to review. And it would be them reviewing it, not me.
The plan set on stream, as, yeah.
Yes.
Because I know the
you
items
would-
were listed in this
So
approval.
you
at
would
least.
want an engineer, and once again, I wish I could give you more information. I wish Mike Lemieux could give you more information. It's not something that I think we've ever dealt with performance-based systems. Most people have been fortunate with the historical buildings. They put a system in, and either they have the funding and it works out, or they have an existing hire and it works out for them when they do suppression work. You do have that right. You absolutely have the right to go to a performance-based system, but it still has to be reviewed after it's, you'd have to follow NFPA 914. It's a very small, well, I say a small pamphlet, it's about 10 chapters. But it's one of the smaller ones. It's not one of these big books.
Smaller than the
Sorry.
building code, yeah. That's fine.
It's a lot smaller than this. The other route that they're talking about, that, and trust me, guys, I really did my best to try to find resolve before we got to this point today of trying to figure out who had jurisdiction and who could rule and not. That's why I sent emails to you guys and I was trying to get answers. And us three here have been in conversations about it, trying to find all the answers for you before we got here today. Because it's never happened. As far as I know, it's never happened. And I'm sure they're going to say the same thing. The city standards have never, at least on the fire side, been taken to this level. It's always been done. So
And-
I would ask this too, and I would like to find out for sure, and I guess I would talk with him and you guys too, and I don't know the options of this, but I was under the impression that it was a NFPA 13 system also. That's why the 100-foot was being mentioned and not the 150. While you're still short, I didn't know if that was, because if you're putting suppression in the lower level, that's actually retail, and a 13R wouldn't be able to go in there. So that's probably another reason you'd want to look at a performance-based system.
There's already an existing system on the first floor. That's the bivouac clothing.
Oh, so you have an existing
There's an
system. You're not
existing-
changing that, you're maybe tying into it? It was designed off of that, or are they separate systems?
They're going to be separate systems.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
separate systems, and we're going to the third floor.
So
to the
so
left.
they have the typical basement, partial first floor, because they probably don't have an FDC already existing for that. That was
They
a lot.
don't.
A lot of the downtown had a limited sprinkler head system, and that's
Correct.
probably what it is. It's
And
a
that's the
limited
existing
area
system.
It's actually a limited area suppression system. So you're actually just sprinkling the third floor. It's really with the new system.
Yes,
So that would be a 13R system.
right. And that being said, so I see right now there's two pathways and maybe a third. One would be, and I don't want to keep kicking the can down the road because I know that our ownership is extremely keen to get occupants in there since we were trying to go for like the student move-in. That didn't work. We're trying to get it as fast as possible. Whether it's another appeals through the PSAA for their appeal and variance for the radius through building standards, similar to what we're doing here, almost mirroring exactly what we're doing here on that schedule, or amending this variance request, but that would take us a subsequent stream approval for any changes to dropping down to 914, NFPA 914, or would and again, I'll broach this one more time, if it were just removed and we followed the 914 spec, so there wasn't any issue of providence of an FDC requiring a hydrant radius at all. That way it would be the exact same existing condition and use as it was before, and we provided more than enough supplemental fire-rated separations anyway, over and above what was already there. I don't want to do that, but if it makes it simpler and faster for us, I would be open to that amendment of the motion.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm going to give a recommendation, regardless of whether I can or not at this appeals, because you could send me an email and I would put it in written form anyways.
Sure.
My two options, what I would look at for you is possibly going through the Public Service Administrator, if that's the right title, if I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
For that variance, and that the variance is a decreased amount at that point. So it is kind of a smaller amount. The other option would be if you had someone in mind that is familiar with performance-based system, that they could utilize a performance-based system, engineering it to what you have in place, maybe minus the FDC, but they'd have to do it in such a way and word it such a way that maybe it would still get approval. And unfortunately, I think that would fall back in your hands. But a performance-based system is still, once again, it's not a prescription system where it's following the letter of the law. So if a performance-based engineer says, I've designed this system, it's designed as a 13R, which is designed to allow people to get out but not put out the fire, and it's going to be able to do that.
So there's a potential avenue that you reach out to the PSA and see what they have to say, or go, am I correct in this? There's that route, or there's adjust it to the 914?
Yeah, or adjust it. That would be the two routes I see moving forward. The quickest route, because I don't even know how that works with going to the Public Service Administrator, is it just a phone call and an email saying, hey, this is here, this is where we're at? Because I don't even know, is there truly a process for that that's in writing?
Well, I assume it will be a letter pursuant to the January 25th City of Ann Arbor Standard Specifications, Section 1C, Variations and Revisions to Standards. We seek relief under paren 1 based on the unusual conditions or the circumstances warranted. So that would be one thing. Now, you could table today's proceeding to a date, and then, you bring it back when if you need to, based on what the PSAA, he might say, no, that's building code, then you're back here. Or he might say, yeah, you can do it. What you don't want is, you don't want Mr. Roberts to grant relief, and then it's all of a sudden building code, and we're back here again. So if it's ever going to be a building code or a fire code, this is the body to do that.
Okay. Well, and this would be my interpretation of it, for those that are present here. Fire code, building code, MBC. Standards, if you look up definitions, standards are different than codes. The only thing about the standards that have been in place, they say they're a minimum standard that must be followed. So that's why it's looking at that sense that when you see them standards, they have been followed to a T.
Right.
And they have existed.
Exception variances as well,
Yeah.
to the standards.
So I think Mr. Reiser makes a point, if you can table this, just to push it out, even though it may not be needed or be used or can't be used, but at least you have it in place as a hold, and then go to the PSAA.
Or revise your application.
Or revise it, because if you go the route of NFPA 914, that could be revised, but that still would have to be submitted to building to review.
Right.
But at least if you hold this today, if we table it for them, it may still go nowhere a month from now.
Or again, that's my worry. So I'm worried about the tennis match of PSA and then bouncing right back here.
But that way you'd have it locked in here.
So,
Right, could we then have an
But isn't,
once you
pending?
excuse me, isn't the difference that if the PSA bounces it back to us, we have a full range of options relative to the building code, meaning that we can consider the third option of if they provided an agreement?
Well, obviously, I mean, if you read it the way,
Yeah.
if you take my words the way I said it, the appeals process for the municipal code, the way it's written for us, says applies to this code, which is applying to codes and not standards. So I would assume at that point, if the PSSA turns it down, like if they say you can do it or can't do it, but if the PSA bumps it back to you guys, I would say you would probably, by my own words and definition and interpretation, you would have that third option to apply it, because that, what's written in that 9108 section of the municipal code applies to code, and it says this code in there. It doesn't say standard. So, and it's very specific, because that's in that same chapter 111 in the police book, is where this gets legally adopted into the city and where my power comes from. So yes, you're right.
Terrific. So, but not to muddy the waters here, just because with each iteration of this, a little bit more information comes out. So there's an existing fire suppression system for the retail or commercial part of the building.
Bivouac on the first floor, yes.
Does that have an FTC?
No, there's no current FTC in the building.
Okay.
And if
And
it
if
did,
you
I
put
assume
in-
it'd be more than 150 feet.
It would still be in the same location, if we put it right at the edge of the building, it would still be 13 feet out of the radius requirements for 13R.
So if they're putting in a suppression system just for the residential level, and that's considered a residential suppression system, do they need an FDC for that?
For 13R, they do,
They do.
yes.
And then they also need that hydrant location.
Yeah, the only difference with the 13R system becomes
I
the
guess-
distance. 100 changes to 150.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is it's a different kind of residential system that would might like allow you to just tap into a domestic.
The
line.
13D system, which is 1 and 2 family dwellings, allows you to
That's just
tap
1
into
and 2
domestic
family,
water.
okay.
There's 3 systems, 13D, 13R, and then 13.
Okay.
13D can't be applied to this.
Yeah.
It's got to be, at a minimum, where it's at now is a 13R, which is still
We attempted
residential.
that via email a few weeks ago, trying to see if it would be considered that, but no, it went through 13R, which necessitated the FDC. But that still begs the point, with Google sprinkler system and the existing conditions without a change of use. I mean, at this point, like, do we just recommend and go on the stream, just removing it altogether and just being like, well, that's
No.
it, you know?
Once again, I usually don't get involved in design work. And I'm trying to think of the frontage of the property, because you can, and I don't know how far it extends over, if that starts to open up to the pathway into Nichols Arcade, because you can do a freestanding FDC, but I don't think that would technically work for that building. I don't think you have the option to move it 13 feet farther down, because then it misrepresents what it's providing access to.
Yeah, doesn't seem like it helps you that much.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to give you that much more wiggle room.
It would be in a weird, like, triangular piece of concrete.
And what's interesting is I think a lot of times when you look in the downtown area, a lot of places that have FDCs, they have them freestanding FDCs where they're coming up out of the ground in front of the businesses. And I always thought it was done that way because they were historic buildings and they didn't want to put the FDC on the building itself. But I don't think that's really going to help you much for the space. So, my recommendation would be, trying to go through the PSAA, write the letter. You have all the information now. You have it, and it's 13R. It's not 100 foot. So you change it to a 13R system, 150 feet. You're that far off.
Yeah, that's reasonable, probably accommodation to.
And even if denied there, you would know your next path forward, which would throw it back into a building code situation, and that would put us back here for another meeting where they have all of the options that they typically would to hear any building code issue.
Could I ask 2 follow-up questions on that specific line? I'll try my best to be clear on them. Again, in an effort to save time, since we all have the information thoroughly in our memories right now, would it be something the board would entertain to do a motion pending any approval? And if it does not get approved at the PSA, then it would come back and we can explain why it wasn't. But if it gets approved at the PSA, then it doesn't need to bounce back here to the board.
From us at all. Yeah.
Correct, right.
Yeah.
And again, and if it doesn't get approved at the PSA, then we'd come back with whatever variations in the request would be here and have the hearing. Again, I just want to cut down, because maybe if there's no process similar to this where there's a monthly meeting, and it can be done via email, and that can be done rather quickly, then that would trigger the approval, assuming there's approval on it, because it's already been moved and so ordered here, versus coming right back. And if it doesn't via the email, then we'd still have to come to the November 20th meeting anyway and have a Thanksgiving dinner together and see if we can get
So,
approval that way.
If they table it here and you're good through the public service administrator, like, we'll just cancel.
Yeah, we just
we'll
cancel
take
the
it off
following
of
month.
meeting here. So I don't know that they need to make a statement for approval because you'd be going a different code route if you were coming back.
Yeah, your holdup right now is a
Either be removing
standard.
the system altogether or going to the NFPA 914 option.
The 914 and a similar system or whatever route you were going to do there, the
Performance.
Performance, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be a slightly different avenue than you're taking right now.
So still pending the PSA review and approval, would there be a method of receiving a temporary occupancy for the space until that time is resolved? The reason being, with its existing condition and the existing use, they could have been occupying the space the whole time once the constructors are out. Just in an effort to get both, because there wouldn't be any inside work being done, it would be purely exterior, tying into the exterior water main and providing the FDC pending what the PSA requires, with or without a hydrant.
Temporary CO for exact what are the result of that? I mean, that's the question.
So I would need to look at it, but our standard procedure is no C of O with any outstanding life safety systems or issues pending. But, you know, I would look at it, what you have,
Sure.
and what the avenue is. But yeah, that's our typical is.
Right, since we have alarms and everything like that. Again, I'm just trying to get occupants in the space while we rectify how we're getting water in the pipes.
I would need to look at it in depth before I could give you that
Okay.
decision.
Well, question, they didn't need it in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, if they're doing this just, excuse me, because, then their life safety is what? Fire extinguishers, alarms,
Fire alarm, stairway.
you know, smoke
Notification
detectors,
devices,
all those things. If all those things are in place,
Which they are. All of those systems are.
wouldn't that be
complete.
that's their baseline? And right now, they're just trying to figure out how to put sprinklers in there?
So without it detailed in front of me, I can't make a decision right here about it. So my.
But that's an easy
my
follow-up
request
for you,
would be,
Bree.
if that's the direction they're going, I would need the information detailed to make an informed decision.
I mean, it sounds like there's two different avenues here. It's submitting your fire, you know, your smoke alarm, your fire extinguisher, having that inspection, and having all that in place, or turn it in and see if that's
That would be almost
bare
like a C of
minimum.
O application on stream, like a usual C of O application. You'd see there's an outstanding mesa, obviously, because that's what this meeting's about, right? But we would say, because of the existing use groups and the fact that we have fire extinguishers, all of the occupant notification devices throughout the area and alarm systems checked, would that be allowed C of O while we await the PSA hearing?
And again, I'd need to
you
see
think
I know.
where all the
Well,
permits
So
are.
it'd be a
I'm not-
strict
I-
interpretation.
I-
I'm not
yeah.
hold you here and be like, give me an answer, Mr. Lemieux.
Yeah, no, I can't make that
I get it,
decision
I get
right
it.
now.
Especially since
But-
you would
but I'm
have an
happy to
open
entertain it.
permit.
I'm happy to look through it.
It would still be the open permit.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, but you wouldn't close out the permit. It would just be an approval of C of O and keeping the permit open for the Mesa permit, which would be a little squirrely.
It might be your best route,
But
especially kicking it back.
I'm just,
Yeah.
if the,
I think your first route is the PSAA.
That's what I'm saying.
Without a doubt.
That's
I
what
think
I'm
when you
saying.
leave
Sorry,
here
I wasn't
today,
saying-
you start drafting a letter to them, you start drafting a letter and just send it off to them, because I'm not even sure if there's a process for it. I think a letter with what you want to accomplish and what you want to do under the 2025 specification standards, that you want them to rule on it, say, this is where we're at, this is where we're at, this is the variance we need for this amount. And I mean, I can't imagine that, you know, I don't think it's going to be held in this council chambers for that. I think it goes strictly to one person alone. They may reach out to me, but they're going to give you, I think, an answer back. I don't think there's a huge, long process for it. But then I don't know, because it hasn't been done that I know of. But I think that is your most immediate walk out of this room today type thing to do. You know, you can keep this tabled here if you had to come back, but that's only just for that purpose if you had to come back for some odd reason. I mean, you might send an email out and 2 days later you're approved.
Right, but I would.
And then you're
rather play
done.
it safe and then write in to the letter, like, please rescind the tabled motion X, whatever the number is.
Well, again,
Yeah, we can
the
cancel
motion we would make here is just a table.
Just a table.
Yeah, we
Right.
wouldn't be making a motion
I
to
didn't know
approve
business
based
lasts
on.
forever on the table and you have to clean it up someday, that kind of thing.
Right.
No, that's a big
Versus
table.
And then concurrently with that, reaching out right when I walk out the door, I'll get on the horn, and then also submit a C of O request for the existing conditions, showing all of the, we already have the approval on the inspections anyway, so we'll just put in the C of O request with that pending nomenclature of everything that we discussed here. And if it's amenable to you, that would be a nice to have, at least the occupancy while we resolve it through the PSA, and who knows, that could be a week, it could be two, I don't know what the response time is, but at the very least, we would front load some of that, knowing that we are meeting the current safety standards while we figure out what we're doing with the sprinkler system. Okay. Then the motion will be to table.
Yes. We have a motion
I motion to table
for 60 days?
for 60 days.
Okay.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The table for 60 days. And good luck with your next meeting with,
Thank you, yes. And emails and/or calls.
You can find that whole standard on the city website under the engineering department.
Yes.
So
Yep. No,
I'm sure you already have it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. Thank you all, appreciate that.
we have a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I want to talk about old business.
Any old business? You have any old business?
For 60 days.
That went away, right? You want to talk about that one?
Did it go away?
I think they found a compliant path, yeah, that's my understanding.
I got another meeting.
Thank you for being here, sir.
I got another meeting.
He's just leaving. I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in
No
favor?
old business, new business.
Oh, sorry, you said that over
You have new
here.
business?
We have none.
Okay.
Double checking.
Nope.
Don't even skip over something.
I think we're good.
So, I'm sorry, who motion to adjourn? Okay.
Motion to adjourn again.
See you, John.
I'll second again.
Those in favor?
Aye.
We did skip the video business interview, administration person, he could watch the whole video, and make it really.